the major pitfalls that people fall under. So when I'm referring to the pitfalls, I'm obviously talking about people that start buying, selling, working in the distribution of this sort of industry, and kind of things that people, like mistakes that I see from the outside, or when I was on the inside, what I saw and what I think maybe is used to you if you're looking to try and set up a brand and trying to work on things not to do. So some of the major pitfalls I think that people do, firstly, is the doubling or tripling down on very hard to find items. I think that as a theme of a business, it obviously has its sort of slight flaw. If you're trying to find things that are very hard to come by, then by nature it's going to be hard for you to come by them, and as a result there's not a lot of scalability with that. So a lot of this is all about relativity to like where you want to be. If you want to be an active, sustainable seller in 10 years' time, then you probably don't want to focus on very hard to come by individual vintage items, because in a sense, the act of sourcing super hard to find vintage items isn't sustainable, because they're not a constantly fed back resource in the industry. And now that everybody's looking for them, it makes it more difficult. So when you kind of look at buying things in a very sort of like bespoke or that very hard to come by sort of theme and genre, I think that that's a major pitfall that people can find themselves into, because you get known for certain brands, you get known for certain things you distribute, and that's fantastic, but you are just creating such a hard to maintain situation. And I think that diversifying with different lines always allows you to take different routes. If you're super tunnel vision on distributing a few brands, maybe it's Palace, Stussy, Nike. Don't get me wrong, it's great. Look, we've got a Nike t-shirt here. But for me, there's Nike, there's Levi's, there's all these other brands, because with my whole ethos around these things, now with what I'm doing, I'm just trying to perpetuate more of a sustainable and sustainability via secondhand and that type of industry. Excuse me. So when we kind of look at that, I'm diversifying myself, because I'm not trying to come to the pitfalls of finding myself in a situation where I'm struggling to find items, if you know what I mean. So I'd say that's one of the major pitfalls that I can see, is the kind of sourcing just a set thing. It also comes back to the relationships, and this might be like the biggest pitfall people fall under, I would say, is the second biggest pitfall people fall under with starting a brand, or as I've just put, just buying and selling, is not appreciating and respecting the relationships you build up over the time. Now, not to talk about people in their own lives, but you can probably tell how like somebody as a person, what they might be like based on how long the relationships they've had with the people that are in their life for. And it's similar to business, because business is a big part of people's life as they start to run it. But what happens, can you see the cat?
What are you doing?
I didn't even see him there. Maybe that just came up, that's funny. But like what happens with a lot of people is they work on this whole like stuff everybody else. I'm going to get here by doing this. I'm going to like ignore this. I'm going to basically take the piss out of people when I can, and then I'm going to just keep sort of like leapfrogging to my next situation. Now that's fine until you miss a leapfrog and you actually fall in the water. And like what I mean by that is sometimes it's good to know the respect that you've had with people's relationships that you've built up over time. There's certain suppliers that I've not used for years, but I've not said a bad word about, and as a result, they wouldn't have said a bad word about me, and as a result, we still have a good underlying respect. So if I ever needed their service, they know that I would consider them. And in the same breath, if they ever needed me for something based on an experience we've had over time, it'd be in the same situation. So just don't burn your bridges. So alongside that, why that sits there with that first one a little bit is because what people do before they've even started is they fail on both of those pitfalls. So they go to suppliers with no respect, asking them for the hard-to-find Adidas sweatshirts. And as a result, the supplier thinks you're an idiot because he thinks you don't know about the industry, and you have just assumed that that's what suppliers will be able to give to you. And then thirdly, you've just had this situation where you've like disrespected like somebody else at the same time, and those people won't have a good thing to say about you to other suppliers. Suppliers are connected with each other, resellers are. So again, it depends about your brand and approach. You might be someone watching this going, I don't mind sourcing all the hard to come by items. I don't mind like having, no respect for people through the industry. Then fair play. And we'll see you in 10 years' time doing it. Maybe not. But I tell you, it's definitely a better thing in a state of mind to actually do that and to sort of, just focus on creating good relationships, focus on being in good situations with people and suppliers and stuff like that. So that's one of the major pitfalls I say people fall under. I would say that another big pitfall that people fall under is that they kind of, who can I think of it like? This is going to be a really random term, but so, Skepta, the artist, right? He's great. But the thing is about Skepta is that over time, it's like he's had an identity crisis in music, in fashion, in lifestyle for like 10 years. Because he went from doing these like songs like Rolex Sweep, and then he's back doing like super drill stuff with certain like artists, and then he's doing like more contemporary things, and then he's just mixing it about. Like he's somebody that's planting his fingers in everything. But what I kind of mean by that is, it's great because Skepta's obviously a different example. He's not in a clothing industry. He actually is, Mainz, London. But aside from like that, that's the representation of if you took that way of being indecisive in an industry. Don't get me wrong, trial and error has to be done in order for you to know what won't work and what will. But to jump between loads of different things constantly won't help a core audience understand what your core values are, so they won't invest with you past a certain point. Do you want to be the seller that has, how do I say this? Would you rather have 1,000 people buy once a year or 100 people buy 10 times a year? I would rather have 100 people buy 10 times a year, because over those 10 times, I'd hope that their experience will keep increasing and improving. Hopefully they'll get to know me and what I'm about more. And over time, if I can ever do anything for them, I'm a person to a camera and the person to the brand, so you kind of know who you're dealing with. So it's really hard because this has come from 12 years of doing all the trial and erroring, but if I can just kind of like look at something to give a simplified perspective for you, I'd say that those three things are pretty key, are pretty key. I definitely can't tell which one is the most key out of all of them. Because I think that it just depends on what you want to do. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one here, actually. It's quite an interesting one. Like, pitfalls always sound like a negative way. I don't know what's best with everything, and what's best for you might be completely different to what I've ever experienced. But based on what I've seen, based on the conversations I've had, and over the time, my perspective on experiences with suppliers and how things work, and just building a brand and versus seeing other people building a brand, I saw what worked and what didn't. And yeah, hope this one finds you well, my dude.